The clock is now running on the Playbook Podcast, the podcast where you take a deeper dive into the game of business, leadership, teamwork, character, the things that drive your motivation and build dedication. When you get a good look at the game plan of great business leaders, you start to formulate your own playbook and your own rise to the top. Make your next play your best play. And now, here are today's game captains, Glenn Amaral and Andy Phillips. Let's go!
Welcome to the Playbook Podcast with Andy and Glenn. I'm Andy Phillips. Joining me for the first ever podcast is my partner and friend and co-host, Glenn Amaral. Glenn, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Andy. How you doing today?
I'm good. This is something we've talked about for quite some time, pretty much since we started working together. So it's fun to be able to kick this thing off. And obviously a special thanks to the Urconic agency where we both work for the help, and 3C, the marketing company, for helping us as well.
Yes, absolutely. That's great. Now we can get some of this stuff that we've had bottled up out for everybody else to hear, good or bad, right?
Exactly. It's your choice if you listen, but we're
that's right.
Doing our thing talking. Now, I will say this. This is going to be the first episode, and we thought no better way than to just have us two on it, because in the future, when we have interviews and guests on, there's not going to be much time where we get to kind of let you see who we are and know more about us. You'll get our personality coming through the screen and coming through the speakers, but this is a way for you to get to know a little bit about us. So we figured no better way to start off than to have us be our own interviews to start. So to give you an idea, we call it the Playbook Podcast. The reason we call it that is because in the business world, it's much like in sports, great leaders and great business leaders want to steal other companies' best plays, aka plans for their company and for their leadership style. So everyone can relate to a sports analogy, and this is the same way. So our goal is to have great business leaders on this show and be able to find out anything we can about what makes them tick and how they overcame certain things in their life and as business leaders. And we hope that anyone who listens can take a little nugget from each episode. Normally, we kick it off with what we call pregame warm-ups, because that's where me and Glenn would each ask each other one question. It's our way to warm up our vocals and warm up our minds before we get into the game and get into the arena with the real person that we're interviewing. But today, since me and you are the people getting interviewed, we're not going to waste people's time with the warm-up. So with that, I want to introduce Glenn Amaral. He is a business insurance sales executive and risk manager for the Urconic agency, and a great guy. Glenn, 15 seconds. Anything else you want people to know about your bio?
Well, I just want people to know that, I love working with businesses that really care about the health of their business. And that's where I can make a difference. And insurance and risk management should not be a commodity.
Completely agree. I'm going to get into that later on because I have a great question for you about that.
All right. That can get pretty deep. And I'd like to introduce Andy Phillips, my friend and partner in crime in this podcast. He's also a risk manager and sales executive. Andy, is there anything that you'd like to tell everybody about yourself? I know you have a pretty impressive resume, but that could take a whole half an hour.
Yeah, and I'm not going to waste everyone's time on that. I have a huge football background, and when I come across in these episodes and in general, when in my work now with the Urconic agency, I'm all about, I like teamwork, and I like teams working together, and I like being at the forefront and being, the kind of the first one in the door on things. And I hope to come across that way. But at the end of the day, the people we're going to be talking to are like-minded people, and I can't wait to take things from them. So when I go into those rooms in the future, I can take some of the stuff I learn here and use it there. So normally, now we start the first half, and we're going to have a halftime. We're going to have a second half. First half is normally business-focused questions, and then the second half will be leadership-focused questions. But because this is our chance to let people know who we are, we're going to have a mixed bag. So let's start off the first half. Glenn, I believe you have the first play of the game.
All right. Well, Andy, what is your why? Why do you want to do this? What do you want to get out of this podcast?
To be honest with you, I part of my answer is what I just said actually in my bio. I love leaders. I love leadership. I love working with teams. And, I had this theory called, and I've used it for a little while now. I call it leaders listen first. A lot of great leaders you see will always speak, speak, speak. But what you don't see is the hours and times before they speak when they were listening. Because to me, you got to know your team. You got to know who you're dealing with. You have to understand the temperature in the room before you can speak on it. So what I want to get out of this is I want to become a better leader myself. And I want to be able to listen to people that have had incredible success as leaders in the business world, because I can't wait to take some of that. I've been a leader in the sports world, and I do think a lot of that might translate to the business world, but I want to become an even better leader in the business world. So I want to hear and listen to these leaders first before then I go do some leading myself and with our clients and with our team at the Urconic Agency. So I think that's what I really want to get out of it most is I want to hear from the best.
Absolutely. I agree. I mean, you don't have to be a boss to be a leader. You lead by your actions.
Oh, exactly. And there's so many different styles of leadership, so many different styles.
And I'm surprised as an offensive lineman that you like to let people in the door.
Yeah. They always say about offensive linemen is like a revolving door. Well, on the field, I put a lock on my door, but right now I'm the guy kind of rushing through them. So it's
that's right.
Tables are turning. But all right, Glenn. So we're talking about leadership a little bit. So I want to get this question to you. What do you honestly think the two most important traits of a great leader are? Obviously, there's more than two, but every company, every business has founding values. If you had to have some founding values of leadership, what would they be in your experience and in your opinion?
Well, one of the things I just read a good book on leadership by Jocko Willenick, and taking ownership for anything that goes on in your organization below you. I think it's very important that there's no finger pointing. You don't take the blame. A real leader is going to own the problems that happen in their organization.
100%.
I think you mentioned the other key component. I'd have to say it's in the top two is to be able to listen from the top and listen from the bottom, because, sometimes the answers come from unlikely places, and that would foster communication between pillars in your company, like from marketing to sales and the other departments in your organization. So I think those I would have to say are my, two most important factors of leadership.
It's funny because when you said ownership, I would have said listening and accountability. Mm-hmm. Ownership and accountability might as well be synonyms in that term, because if you never take accountability for your actions and even your work ethic, you got to be accountable to showing up on time, just like you tell everyone else to. If you're not accountable, if you don't take ownership, it's very tough for people to respect you. And if you want to be a leader, you got to have the respect of the people you're leading.
Yeah, nobody really respects somebody that's passing the buck. I mean,
exactly.
If you're out in a restaurant and the server says, "Oh, the kitchen screwed up." Years ago, when I was a server, if the kitchen screwed up, I'd say, "Hey, that's on me. I'm sorry. I must have put it in too late. I put it in wrong." And then they looked at me. It's like, okay, we all make mistakes. This guy's owning it. And, things always went smoother when I wasn't pointing fingers. And, it's a valuable lesson I learned.
I love it.
Awesome. So, got another question for you here, Andy. What would you consider your most valuable currency?
So we've talked about this before, and I'm keeping my answer the same, because I actually think is really what separates a lot of people. And I think the most valuable currency would be time, because everyone has the same 24 hours in a day, the same 60 minutes in an hour. How you use yours truly separates you from the field and whatever industry you're in. I think it's valuable because you have to learn how to maximize the exact same time that everyone has. How are you going to somehow create more time for yourself to better yourself individually as a person and as a business leader? And I just think it's something that everyone has. How you make it valuable is on you. So I'm going to still say time.
Right. And you know what mine is? It's integrity. But it's interesting
I get that.
on time, because in football you have the 2-minute drill. It's amazing what teams can do with the 2-minute drill. And so why weren't they doing that all along, right? So But I also realize if you look at I used to be in print advertising, and you'd get on a deadline and you had 2 days to the deadline. That's like the 2-minute drill. That's where you got most of your business because the juices were flowing and you're calling different plays, fighting a little bit harder to get it done. So
100%.
Time is important. If we can figure out how to let some of that 2-minute drill go into the rest of the, time in a day, it would be great.
I agree. And there's reasons why the 2-minute drill works the way it does, but that'll be for a totally different conversation. And we'll get onto that at a different time. But all right, this is going to probably be our last question of the first half. I got a good one for you. This is one that until, unless it dries out, this one I want to ask almost every one of our guests, because to me, this is really where you learn about who somebody is. You find somebody's character and, really where you find a great leader, because you don't always, it's the old saying is it's easy to lead when everything's fine. How you lead when you're up against and your back's against the wall, that's the sign of the good lead. That separates the good leaders from the great leaders. And so my question for you, Glenn, it could be business or personal. What was your rock bottom as it could be related to business. It could be related to you as a person. When you get to your rock bottom, you find a lot about yourself out, and also you're clearly where you are now. So you did fight your way out of it. How did that go?
Well, if I were to look at my rock bottom, I mean, everybody has ups and downs and ebbs and flows, but one that I think would stick out to me was 2008. I don't know how many of our listeners had a great 2008. What, you were probably in elementary school in 2008?
That would have been my sophomore and junior year of high school.
Okay. Well, in 2008 was not a good year for me and for a lot of people in business, but it was Christmas Eve and I noticed that I had a bump and I thought I had an inguinal hernia. Turns out I had infected lymph nodes and went to the hospital figuring they were just going to, take care of the hernia. But it turns out I had to stay in the hospital for a week. I had infectious disease doctors. They were trying to figure it out. So the whole first quarter of 2008, I was in and out of the hospital. And, it just put me in a bad financial position, health position, and it makes you realize what's really important. And obviously what's important is your health is more important than anything because you can't succeed in business without your health. And, it just gave me time to think about what's really important in life. And, I came out of it on the other side. It took a little bit of a drive, but I was able to do it. And you got to have that Rocky mentality. It's like I was down, at about 8, I started crawling up on the ropes and I was back up, ready to go again.
That what's great about that is I think there's always that rope you can grab onto when you're down there. It's your choice whether you do. And knowing you, Glenn, it doesn't surprise me that you'd be able to bounce back from that. You're very persistent in your life, and you're very persistent. And when you want something, you want to get something done. You always seem to find a way to do it. And for example, this podcast. I mean, you were the one that really spearheaded this from the get-go, and I'm thankful that you did because I think it's going to be great for both of us. But for anyone who doesn't know Glenn Amaral, he's a fighter, so that story doesn't shock me at all.
You got it. Well, thank you very much.
This is great now. So this is a part that I think is going to be more beneficial for our listeners and maybe us because it's halftime. So at halftime, what happens at halftime of a game? It's a change. You're no longer focused about exactly what is happening in the current moment on the field. You get to take time, take a quick break. So that's exactly what we're going to do at halftime. It's a speed round. So every halftime is going to be a 10-question speed round for our guest, unrelated to business. This is a chance that we get to, just find some funny things out about them, some interesting facts about them, and find out some of their likes and dislikes. So normally it'd be a speed round, which means answer the question as fast as possible in as limited words and time as possible. It doesn't mean it has to be, if you have a quick explanation, absolutely give it. But if you don't want to explain anything, you don't have to. I mean, it's a classic speed round. So normally me or Glenn would ask our guests 10 questions. In this case, we'll each ask each other 5 questions, and then we'll get into the second half.
All right. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So Andy, who would play you in a movie?
I'm a realist, and so I won't sit here and say Brad Pitt. I'm going to say the man himself, Kevin James. For anyone that used to watch King of Queens, all my buddies in college used to tell me that that was my future, was Kevin James in King of Queens. So I'm trying to improve on some of those things, but no, I think he's a bigger guy, ball of energy. I try to be. So I'm going to go with the man himself, Kevin James. And in his later years, he's been growing a beard too, so might be more realistic than I originally thought.
Hey, and let's have some fun. Anybody listening to this podcast, who do you think should play him in a movie?
Wrong answers only.
Right. Next question. What's your favorite musician or band?
Garth Brooks. Friends at Low Places, baby.
Well, you certainly do have friends in low places right here, right?
We could have named the podcast that.
You know what? That would have been awesome.
Might be some copyright issues, though.
That's right. All right. This is going to be a good question. What's your favorite sports team?
I'm going to go with professional here. College will obviously be right behind me. Central Michigan Fire Up Chips, where I graduated. I'm going to go Green Bay Packers. It's them or the Lions, but I'm going to pick one because that's what we do on the show. We make decisions. So I'm going to do the team that I put the helmet on for.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's tough to make a quick decision like that. So that was great.
That's what we do.
Who is your favorite athlete other than yourself?
So no, I don't think that highly of myself. Don't worry. I'm going to go Chris Spielman. I bet you more than half the people here don't even know who he is. He was a linebacker for the Detroit Lions in the 90s, and I was I still am a huge Lions fan growing up in Michigan. Chris Spielman, great guy. He's a guy that stopped playing football for a year to help take care of his wife as she was battling cancer. Has a great foundation for cancer now, and actually he was doing broadcasting for Fox for a lot of years, and he just got hired back to the Lions front office, and hopefully he'll help turn that around. But the way he played the game was tough, hard-nosed, did anything he could, always prided himself on being the smartest guy on the field. I tried to do the same when I played, and more importantly, he's just a great human being.
That's awesome. And one thing you can learn about Andy is he's got a lot of empathy, which I think is a great trait, and he really cares about what he does. So now, if you weren't such a good guy and you're on death row, what would be your last meal?
So clearly I was wrongly convicted. But anyways, so I've actually thought of this question before, and I think the answer that a lot of people would want to say here is something extravagant, like, a 40-ounce tomahawk with, a great Pilsner and some, green beans. And I'm going to be real though. If I'm on death row, I need something that's going to comfort me and something that maybe puts me a little bit out of my misery. So I want a large Sal's Pizza. Sal's over on Tillman Street. And I want a couple bottles of some red wine to ease my pain a little bit. I want to be comfortable in my demise.
Oh boy, I'm on the biggest loser, so I'm drooling here a little bit, trying to watch what I eat.
Well, when you're on death row, I don't think you have to worry about that. But all right,
no, because you will lose a little weight, right?
My turn to grill you real quick. Speed round. You ready?
You got it.
You're an avid. You already talked about reading. I know you also like podcasts. What is your favorite book or your favorite podcast?
Well, I'm going to go with my favorite podcast right now because I've been listening to it a lot. It's the Power Producers Podcast, which, I want to listen to things every day that's going to make me better at my job and, not miss the little things when I'm reviewing businesses and the risk.
Right.
And, things, like reviewing, experience mods and things that I'm not going to get into right now, but I really do learn a lot from it. And I try to balance that out with, good fiction book as well.
I like it.
I just read Dean Koontz.
There you go.
Yes. So that was good.
All righty. So next question. I want you to give me not only the make and the model, but I want the year if you can remember, because it's another chance for me to rub in my age to you. First car you ever owned
was a white Honda Civic. And if you think about this, it probably got, 38 miles to the gallon back when we had regular gas.
Why'd you get rid of it?
What's that?
Why'd you ever get rid of it?
Yeah, all things die. I probably crashed it or something. I forget. But that was a great little car. And what was the second part of that question?
What year? Do you remember the year?
Let's see. I think it had to be like in 1980.
Okay. All right. Not
So you
bad.
can see why it's not still here.
Yeah, that makes a little more sense now.
At 16, not taking care of a car and babying it.
I wasn't even a thought yet. All right, Glenn. If you weren't doing this, if you weren't a risk manager, if you weren't in the insurance field, let's say, what do you think you'd honestly be doing? Not what you want to do. Don't give me something that's totally unrealistic. What do you actually think you would have went into?
I would like to be, I would be a tour guide.
Okay. What would you tour? Like for a city, for a zoo? What would you want to?
No, I would kind of, like a historical area. Both my parents were teachers.
Okay.
I like to talk. I like to meet interesting people. And, I have a lot of useless knowledge. So maybe if I could do something that had useful knowledge that I could disseminate to, people that want to learn about an area, let's say Gettysburg or, any of those areas, it'd be very Zen-like. And, it'd be a lot of fun.
I think you can make the uninteresting sound interesting. So even I would hit up those tours, I think.
Absolutely. We would definitely have some fun.
All right. We got 2 more questions. And me and you have both dragged on the speed round. So let's hurry it up.
Okay,
My fault as well. What is your biggest fear?
Letting people down that believe in me.
I can see that. I think that's also what makes you a good team player, because that's your biggest fear is a teammate, is letting your teammates down. So that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, my mom, dad, they've always believed in me, my wife, and to let them down would be too much.
All right, Glenn, you have to spend the next 10 years of your life at a lake house, a beach house, or a house in the mountains. Which one is Glenn Emerald choosing?
No doubt a lake house.
Okay. I kind of pegged you for in the mountains just because I could see you. You're a reader, so I could see you by the fire with a book in the mountains. Yes. But you can still do that at a lake house. So I don't blame you for being by some water. I would absolutely do the same. That's a speed round. When we get into the real guests, I'll put more of an emphasis on speed because me and Glenn were talkers. But that's why we have the show.
That's right. Absolutely. We got to get it out.
So we have about 8 minutes left. So we're going to get into the second half of questions and get as many as we can. So Glenn, I got a question for you. Now, normally this is the leadership and business or leadership and experience focused questions. But here again, we're just kind of spitball a little bit to let people get to know more about us. When talking about our industry, I told you I was going to get back into this. When you said we're not a commodity. Is there any misconceptions about the business insurance world that if you had a minute to clear up, you'd want to clear up? And I'm giving you that minute right now.
That's the key right there. It's like so many people in our business have turned this into a commodity that business owners are like, give me your best price. Well, what are we doing for next year and the year after that? You have to have a plan, and that's why we have a playbook, right, Andy? I mean,
yes,
you've got to plan for the future, just like you do, your business plan. I mean, the risk management, if you have claims and things like that, it could put you out of business and make you less competitive. So our job is to make sure from our end that we're making you competitive. You have a great profit margin, and, to be your partner, we want to be viewed as, alongside your counsel, your legal counsel, and your CPA. Yep. Because who are you calling first if you have an accident, right? You're calling your insurance guy, not your lawyer.
Yeah, exactly. So totally agree.
That in a nutshell, in 60 seconds, right? I think I covered that.
Yep.
So here's a deep question here, Andy. And, I could ask myself this too, and I do on a regular basis. What aren't you good at?
So this is a kind of a tough one, because I don't want to give like the classic interview answer when you're meeting with a company. What aren't you good at? Well, I'm not good at putting my work down. I'm not going to do anything cliche like that. Mm-hmm. So I want to give a real honest answer here, and I'm going to relate it to our industry and to our business. I'm not as seasoned. Because I've only been in the industry for a little over 2 years. So it's something that, sometimes I walk into a meeting and they know I'm young. So they always, I get the question a lot, oh, how long have you been in the insurance world? And I don't lie. And my wealth of knowledge in the insurance industry isn't what it is for somebody who's been in it for 15, 20 years. So I'm not as good at maybe some of that lingo, that more in depth, maybe a situation I've never seen. But if you find out what you're not good at, how do you balance that out? We have an unbelievable team. And I will say one thing I am good at is I'm more than humble and willing enough to ask questions. If I don't know something, I'm going to find out the correct answer. So that's what I tell any prospect or client I deal with. If I don't know an answer, I will find out the correct answer. I'm not going to guess, because when we guess in our business, we put the other people and ourselves and our company at risk. To me, you don't need every answer to have success, as long as you have people around you that can complement your weaker areas. So that's where I would kind of lean with that. Now, no one wants to admit they don't have the highest knowledge in their industry, but I'm aware. I'm self-aware of who I am and what I'm not good at, but I am aware enough to know that, and then I can surround myself with people that can help put together just an incredible team.
Well, and if I could add to that, and I've been around you enough to know that I've been around people that have been in it 10, 15 years, and I would stack them against you any day, because your accelerated learning is pretty admirable for sure. So no doubt about that.
I appreciate it.
No
All
problem.
right, let's make this the last question before we get into the Hail Mary. Glenn, best advice you ever received from a mentor? You're a guy that's had, you've held many different titles, and you're very seasoned. And I know you're so good at finding mentors. You're so good at reaching out to people. So I'm sure you've had many mentors in your life. What do you think the best piece of advice you ever got was?
Well, a mentor can be older, younger. They come in all shapes and sizes, male, female. But I remember the one piece of advice I got. I was working in the print advertising, and they hired a woman, and she got a larger office than me. And so I went to my boss. I'm like, how come I didn't get that office? I've been here longer. And he said, Glenn, he goes, it doesn't matter where you park your ass. It matters what you park in the parking lot. And I've never forgotten that. And I've never cared about what kind of office I got, because that's not what it's all about. And it taught me to put my ego in check.
That is incredible. That is incredible. I love that.
And thank you, Marty.
I was like, how long ago do you think would you guess you got that piece of information? How long ago do you think
that had to be? Oh my gosh, 30 years ago.
Wow.
I mean, I was just in the business. I mean,
and it stuck with you.
Yeah, it's Marty Nash, great guy.
I got to answer that one. I'm going to take 30 seconds, then we're getting to the Hail Mary question. Best advice I ever got. I'm not going to name the coach, because nowadays you just never know how people will take this answer. When I was a freshman in college, I got hurt in practice, sprained both ankles, same practice. I could barely walk. I'm an offensive lineman. You kind of need your ankles to move humans. And this certain person came up to me and said, there was one period left in practice. He said, do you just want to sit out the rest? Do you want to sit out the last period of practice and rest those ankles? I said, sure. I'm young. I bit the bait. He comes up to me after practice. I'm still a freshman trying to prove myself. And he called me Larry, by the way. My middle name's Lawrence. He called me Larry. He goes, hey, Larry, when you're not out there, people forget about you. Get those ankles right. He was basically telling me, if it ain't broke, you better be out there. In life, I think it's the same way. If you can make sure to get the job done, you better do it. Never forget that. All right, Glenn, we got the Hail Mary question. We got about 2 minutes to go here. Hail Mary. It's the last play. It's your last heave of the game, your last chance. This is our Hail Mary question. We believe at the end of the game, this is our best chance for a win. So we're going to continue this question with most of our guests. Glenn, last question of the podcast, last play of the game. If you had to give 22-year-old Glenn Amaral one key to success or any little word of advice in about 30 seconds, what would you say?
Time is fleeting. And, when I was younger, living in the moment, that instant gratification that you want when you're young, to have the discipline to look a little bit in the future. And we were talking, excuse me, off, yesterday about the juxtaposition of living in the moment and ambition, right?
Yeah.
So you need a mix of that. And I think back then I was more just in the moment and, not thinking about the future. So
yeah, I get it.
And how about 22-year-old Andy? What was that, like a year ago?
7 years ago. No, I would say it's okay. It's okay to be bold and take chances. I was a kid when I grew up in Michigan. I honestly never thought I'd leave the state. I didn't know what I want. I thought I'd never leave the football field, whether it was the actual field playing, whether it was coaching, whether it was scouting. I thought I'd always find my way in there. So it doesn't sound like much to people, but to move states, to move away from any connection you've really ever made, to move away from any resource you could possibly have to make your initial life easier when getting into the business world. It's not easy. It's tough. Obviously I had reservations. And then even going to a job that we have now, it's something that, like I said earlier, when you're young, you don't always have the information or the experience that can sometimes be looked down upon. I don't have enough gray hairs when I go into some of these meetings. But with what I've done so far in the industry and then what I've done so far since moving from Michigan, I would tell myself, go for it every time, do it again, be bold, take chances. You got one life. And if you have the dedication, you're going to succeed with it. So
would you say always go for it on fourth down?
Oh, if it's 4th and 2, you go for it. Now there's time to be smart with your decisions.
Right.
4th and 9 backed up into your own end zone. It's okay to punt here and there. It's all about decisions. But alrighty, so I'm going to close it down here. Glenn, I think this is phenomenal. Good way for people to get to know a little bit more about us, because as we go forward, we're going to get people on who are a little bit smarter than us. We can get some good,
that's the idea, right?
Good answers there.
Selfish.
You'll be able to find. Also, when you see this on LinkedIn or anywhere that you can find it, whether it's on Spotify, find me and Glenn on LinkedIn. Find us anywhere you can and comment. We want to hear advice, feedback, what you like. And if you have anyone you think would fit the podcast and be a great interview, we're more than willing to hear you out, hear your suggestions. We're looking forward to the next episode as well. Until next time, shutting it down here for the first time, and we got many more to come. I'm Andy Phillips, and that's my partner,
and I'm Glenn Amaral.
And we're excited to continue this journey with you.
Absolutely.